And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas. Gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today is November the 11th, Veterans Day. It's 315th day of the year. Just 50 days remain to the year's over with, and we'll start a new year. Well, it's Singles Day. Practice self-love and self-appreciation. National Sunday Day. National Metal Day. Celebrates and pays heed to the various aspects of metal music and heavy metal bands. World Origami Day. National Education Day. National Indiana Day. Pocky Day, or Pokey Day. Data Governance Day. National Survivors Day. Recognizes survivors of abuse and allies and those who speak out against injustice. Death and Duty Day. Remembrance Day. And as I said at the top of the show, it is Veterans Day, honoring the individuals who selflessly served and defended freedom. Armistice Day in France. Poland's Independence Day. Remembrance Day in Australia. National Book Award Week. National Split Pea Soup Week. Artes Mundi. National Recycling Week. Anti-Bullying Week. Nurse Practitioner Week. Perioperative Nurse Week. Dear Santa Letter Week. Time to get those letters off to Santa Claus, don't you know? Sugar Awareness Week. Human-Animal Relationship Awareness Week. National Young Readers Week. And Web Summit Lisbon. Famous people born on this date: Leonardo DiCaprio and Demi Moore. Well, on that note, let's see what stories we have in the news. You know, the craziness is still infesting our universities. A bloody brawl broke out as agitators staged a protest outside a TPUSA event. That happened at UC Berkeley, which has long been known as the home of liberal craziness. The bloody fight broke out near University of California, Berkeley, Monday afternoon, ahead of a Turning Point USA event on campus. That event, which featured Dr. Frank Turek and Rob Snyder, marked the end of the This Is the Turning Point tour. Took place just 2 months after TPUSA's founder, Charlie Kirk, was assassinated at a campus event in Utah. Confrontation erupted at about 4:30 Pacific Standard Time. During the brawl, 2 men were seen fighting each other, one of whom had blood gushing out of his face. Top House Committee Chairman reveals, and my screen just went blank. He won't seek re-election in 2026. House Budget Committee Chairman Jody Arrington, Republican of Texas, is not going to seek re-election in 2026. This senior Republican lawmaker will have finished serving 10 years in Congress when he leaves at the end of the next year. He'll have to get a real job. He said, I've got a firm conviction, much like our founders did. Public service is a lifetime commitment, but public office is and should be only a temporary stint in stewardship, not a career. Tell that to people like Pelosi and Schumer. The conservative Texan told Fox News he felt he is leaving on a high note, having played a key role in crafting President Trump's big, beautiful bill. Well, the Senate ends its 41-day government shutdown stalemate. Sends a bipartisan deal to the House. Its drug on in the Senate officially ended late Monday night. Places Congress on the path to reopen the government later this week. Senators advanced a bipartisan funding package to end the government shutdown after a group of Senate Democrats broke from their colleagues and joined the Republicans in their bid to reopen the government. And those same 8 Senate Democrats, caucus members, stuck with the Republicans and provided the crucial votes needed to send the package to the House. It took 60 to pass it. President Trump says Supreme Court's tariff decision is going to cost a $3 trillion economic hit. It could trigger a $3 trillion unwind, he said. He says the court got wrong numbers as the justices prepare to review emergency tariff powers. He issued a warning Monday on Truth Social, claiming the U.S. Supreme Court got the wrong numbers in a pending case that challenges his authority to impose tariffs under emergency powers. He said an adverse decision could lead to an economic unwind exceeding $3 trillion, calling it an insurmountable national security event. Be devastating to the future of our country, possibly non-sustainable, he said. Supreme Court's going to review whether Trump's use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to levy tariffs on imported goods without additional congressional approval was lawful. A ruling against Trump would require the government to refund billions of dollars in duties collected since 2024, potentially reshaping trade policy and testing the limits of presidential economic authority. California's mental health loophole frees killers and crooks with terrible laws, according to a sheriff. It was meant to help people with mental illness avoid prison. It's now letting violent criminals and repeat offenders walk free, according to Sacramento County Sheriff Jim Cooper. Called it a terrible policy that's being abused by career criminals. But that's typical of the California legal system. He says there's room for diversion somewhere, especially if somebody's got an addiction problem, he said. What's happening is they open the gates open. Right now, everybody's taking advantage of it. A lot of criminals are. They're abusing the system. That's the unfortunate part about it. In a post shared last week on the department's official Facebook page, Cooper criticized state diversion policies. He said career criminals are using mental health as a shield to avoid consequences. Well, there's a killer condition that lands in the top 10 leading causes of death as global cases surge. Talking about chronic kidney disease, been named the 9th leading cause of global death. Record numbers of men and women are currently estimated to have reduced kidney function, according to new research after a study published in the journal The Lancet. Researchers at NYU Langone Health, the University of Glasgow, and the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, University of Washington, analyzed the rise of kidney disease worldwide. They examined 2,230 published papers and health data sets from 133 countries, searching for diagnosis, mortality, and the toll of disability from that disease. From 1990 to 2023, cases rose from 378 million to 788 million, landing that disease in the top 10 of most deadly diseases in the world for the very first time. Well, Chief Operating Officer of American Airlines said American air travelers are going to face ongoing disruptions as the Senate moves to end the shutdown. American Airlines Chief Operating Officer calls flight disruptions simply unacceptable in an employee message. He addressed the employees on Monday in a memo about the airline's operational struggles, called widespread flight disruptions simply unacceptable. He says, I won't mince words. This week's operations was incredibly challenging for our industry, our customers, and our airline, and for you, our team members. Simply unacceptable, and everybody deserves better. So we'll see if anything does improve. Well, President Trump argues that Chuck Schumer made a mistake amid the Democratic leader's party infighting. He argued that Senate Minority Leader Schumer went too far. Some Democrats demand their party leader be replaced during a wide-ranging interview on the Ingram Angle on Monday. He said, I think he made a mistake in going too far. He thought he could break the Republicans, and Republicans broke him. Well, Schumer's finally coming to understand he is not the president. After 8 senators broke rank with the Democratic Party on Sunday, voted for the House passed spending plan to reopen the government to that their Democratic colleagues had blocked 14 times. Senate voted 60-40 Monday to end the government shutdown. Final votes going to the House later on this week. Well, the Star Wars actor said he'd be open to work with Disney again if they don't succumb to fascism. That seems to be the Hollywood's favorite line. Anything they don't like is fascist. Oscar Isaac, starred in Disney's Star Wars sequel trilogy, said on Sunday he'd consider working with the entertainment giant again if they refuses to kowtow to racism. They can't seem to get the difference correct between racism and fascism. Well, a lot of restaurants are offering free Veterans Day meals to past and current military members nationwide. Several major restaurants and cafe chains are offering free meals, drinks, or buy one, get one free deals exclusively for veterans and active service members on this Veterans Day. All the offers require military identification unless noted otherwise. Among those restaurants are Applebee's, offering select entrees for free from a limited menu throughout the day to all veterans or active duty military members. Buffalo Wild Wings, past and present military members can enjoy 10 free boneless wings and an order of regular fries for free. May have to check that out. California Pizza Kitchen, all veterans and active duty military visit the California Pizza Kitchen will get a complimentary beverage and one entree from a limited menu. Chili's, one of my favorite restaurants. Veterans and active duty military can get a free meal and a non-alcoholic drink from a limited menu at all participating Chili's locations. Chipotle Mexican Grill, diners who visit there between 4 and 8 p.m. can buy an entree and get a second entree of equal or lesser value for free. Cracker Barrel, Old Country Store. All veterans and active duty military can swing by a Cracker Barrel location throughout the day to get a complimentary sunrise pancake special. According to Sarah Moore, Chief Marketing Officer at Cracker Barrel, at Cracker Barrel, we believe sharing a warm, delicious meal is one of the simplest, most sincere ways to say thank you. Denny's, also giving away breakfast pancakes to veterans and active duty military. Golden Corral, going to welcome veterans and current service members and National Guard for a free buffet dinner from 4 p.m. till close. Hy-Vee, there's no time for a sit-down meal. Hy-Vee might be the best place to fill up. Buffet-style breakfast to be offered for free to all veterans and active duty military from 6 to 10 a.m. IHOP, veterans can enjoy a patriotic meal courtesy of IHOP's red, white, and blueberry pancake combo. Krispy Kreme, you can get a free coffee and donut from Krispy Kreme. Gonna need ID, of course. Outback Steakhouse, a free Aussie 3-course meals waiting for all current and former military members at Outback. Shake Shack, all active duty military and veterans can swing by Shake Shack and get a free burger. Starbucks, veterans, military service members, and their spouses can grab a cup of coffee for free at participating Starbucks. Red Robin, veterans and active duty service members can get a free Red Robin's Big Tavern burger from Red Robin's all day long. Whataburger isn't just giving away a free taquito to current and retired military folks during breakfast hours on Wednesday. It's announced it's giving away a free taquito every Tuesday through the end of the year. Well, that's the list that I've got. Well, Jewish students are scared after Mamdani wins New York City mayor race, calling it a huge blow. Jewish students in New York City are scared about what Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani's victory means for their lives on campus, saying the Democratic Socialist wins a huge blow to the New York City Jewish community. Students from Columbia University, Bernard College, and Baruch College sat down with Fox News, revealing some of the major concerns they have about the future under Mamdani's tenure as mayor. According to Aiden Herlinger of Baruch College, we're looking at somebody who has shouted out the Holy Land 5 in a rap song, which he still hasn't taken off his Twitter. He supported globalized intifada, refused to condemn it, and that's a dangerous precedent. Well, Prince Harry's heartfelt essay shows deep regrets about leaving Britain, according to royal experts. He may have spent the weekend amid Hollywood glamour with Meghan Markle, but his thoughts were thousands of miles away. On November 5th, the Duke of Sussex wrote a surprise essay titled The Bond, the Banter, the Bravery, What It Means to Be British, released ahead of Remembrance Day. That's today. It's an observance honoring members of the armed forces who lost their lives in service. He says, though currently I live in the U.S., Britain is and always will be the country I proudly served and fought for. The banter of the mess, the clubhouse, the pub, the stands, the ridiculous as it sounds, these are things that make us British. He says, I make no apology for it, I love it. Well, the White House has taunted Ilhan Omar with McDonald's photos, suggesting she can go back to Somalia. A lot of folks are ready for her to leave the U.S. She's a Democratic representative from Minnesota. She was born in the U.S. There's been questions about her marital status. There were stories that she actually married her brother. And not being from Arkansas, that kind of goes against the grain. Monday, the White House shared on X an image of President Trump waving goodbye through a McDonald's drive-thru window in 2024. That's in response to a video of Omar saying she wasn't concerned about being deported. She said, I don't have any worry. I don't know how they'd take away my citizenship and deport me. Said in the clip the White House responded to. Rizzi was made on the Dean Obadiah show in October. I don't even know why that's such a scary threat. I'm not 8 years old who escaped war anymore. I'm grown. My kids are grown. Like I could go live wherever I want to. The problem is she just won't shut up. Well, according to Laura Ingraham, the Trump economy's starting to ramp up. This machine's getting running. Well, a college pre-med student was killed in a hit and run while jogging, according to authorities. University of Kansas student was killed in a hit and run while she was jogging, according to local police. Douglas County Sheriff's Office wrote in a news release 20-year-old Elsa McGrain was going for an evening jog Thursday in Lawrence, Kansas. Somebody driving a pickup truck hit her and then fled the scene. That suspect was later identified as William Ray Klingler, 36. McGrain was hit at about 6 p.m. near Lawrence Regional Airport, but her body wasn't found until 3:35 a.m. when a passerby called 911. Klingler was arrested days later after police solicited tips from the public. McGrain was studying pre-med, set to graduate in 2026. Well, as the shutdown of our government ends, furious Democrats are actually eating their own. The Schumer shutdown appears to be coming to an end. By refusing to vote for a clean continuing resolution that kept the government spending at levels that they themselves approved earlier, Democrats have held the country hostage for a record-breaking 50 days. They've hurt Americans, angered their union allies, and dampened consumer sentiment. So what were they trying to accomplish? What did Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and his Democratic colleagues gain from throwing hundreds of thousands of people out of work, endangering American air travelers, and causing great hardship and anxiety for those dependent on SNAP benefits, and actually slowing the growth of the U.S. economy? They didn't win anything. They didn't get an extension of Obamacare premium subsidies. They didn't undo the Medicaid reforms they'd fought tooth and nail for. And worst of all for Schumer, the shutdown in no way endeared him to the Democratic Socialists who are actually tearing its party apart. Far from it, it's accomplished just the opposite. Last spring, when Senator Schumer joined Republicans to keep the government open, he was blasted by progressives in his party who vowed to resist President Trump at every turn. Near furious, he gave in to the GOP and didn't win any concessions for allowing the government to continue to function. Never mind that polls show most Americans want our two political parties to work together to resolve the nation's problems. And never mind that the president was elected by a majority of U.S. voters. The left just simply will not have it. One of Schumer's harshest critics at the time was far-left squad member Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the famous AOC who plans on being president, who got her career started as a bartender. She's hinted she might challenge her party's de facto leader as he approaches his re-election in 2028. In April, polling showed she could actually win that matchup. Well, 15-year-old mosaic was found with a mysterious inscription found at a traditional birthplace of Abraham. Archaeologists in Turkey recently unearthed a 1,500-year-old Christian floor mosaic in Urfa, city traditionally regarded as the birthplace of Abraham. It's reported by an Anadolu agency, state-run outlet based in Ankara, October 19th. Officially known as Şanlıurfa, Urfa is located in southeastern Turkey and home to the historic Urfa Castle, Byzantine-era structure. Well, a father and son duo was gunned down in Blue City after a jewelry store robbery. Thousands offered for information. The Chicago Police Department said an unknown male offender went into a jewelry store at about 5:49 p.m. on Saturday in Chicago's little village area and stole items. Suspect was then involved in a physical altercation outside the store. He fired 2 shots, which hit the victims. They're still looking for him. Well, a Florida man's been fired from his job. He's been accused of threatening a church attack online. Said it's going to look like a genocide. Michael Labone, 32, arrested after a tip was sent to Crime Stoppers, according to a Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office affidavit. Investigators said he posted videos on social media saying he'd been fired from his job and made threats against places of worship. He posted and later deleted one video on November 4th where he states, "I got fired and I'm fired up." Also allegedly stated it's all kill shot before holding up his hands, pretending to hold a rifle, mimicking the sound of a firearm being fired. He said, "I never take my own life, but I understand the people that I'm going to be going after are and could potentially be dangerous." He said, "Christian fellowship's on my list to hit also. My end game is taking you out. Not necessarily the people that are yelling you need to be worried about. It's the quiet ones. It's the ones that no longer fear death." He said, "I expect death to come fast and very violent. Hopefully I go out fast." Takes all kinds of nuts to run the world, folks. Well, Kim Kardashian has posted a carefully bikini photos after failing the California bar exam. Now, I know a lot of people that failed the bar exam that I took. Nobody put on a bikini and ran around. She went on a beach vacation to celebrate failing. Well, there's a teen, a Florida 15-year-old, faces felony charges after an alleged reckless electric dirt bike chase through traffic at speeds approaching 70 miles an hour. He's facing felony charges of leading deputies on a dangerous electric dirt bike pursuit through rush hour traffic Tuesday evening. Deputies from Collier County Sheriff's Office said they spotted the teen, identified as Kyle Vincent Simone of Naples, about 6 p.m. riding recklessly through Golden State Parkway near 66th Street Southwest. Dashcam video showed him speeding and weaving through traffic. According to authorities, he didn't show any regard for public safety. Deputies attempted to stop him. He took off, weaving through traffic and reaching speeds of nearly 70 miles an hour. Now, that's some kind of electric dirt bike, let me tell you. Well, there's a lot of Veteran Day sales and brands that have military discounts. Just need to ask for them and have some ID. Well, yesterday we were talking about strange disappearances. We're going to talk about some more of that today. You know, in this country alone, every year over 100,000 people disappear. A lot of those folks are looking for the poor man's divorce and running from unhappy marriages. You know, in addition to strange disappearances, there's been a lot of strange sightings in national parks. I don't know how many of you have ever heard of Dogmen. Been a lot of sightings. At the same time, there's been stories about folks disappearing. And these aren't just campfire tales dreamed up to scare kids. These are detailed reports and accounts from people who've encountered these things. Hunters and hikers and park rangers and people who've seen something that defies explanation. They talk about unsettling howls that aren't like any wolf they've ever heard, and strange tracks that are too big to be that of a dog. Now, national parks generally are vast, wild spaces full of dense forests and hidden valleys. Perfect places for something to hide that doesn't want to be found. And they're also places where people mysteriously vanish. One minute they're there, the next minute they're gone. And there are stories that pop up all the time about hikers who vanish without a trace, campers who never return. Official explanations are often things like getting lost or accidents, but sometimes those explanations just don't cut it. Now, these are often experienced outdoors people, folks who know the woods, know how to survive, and yet they vanish without a trace, just gone. But what if something else is happening out there? What if something is actually hunting the hunters? And that's where Dogman comes in. Now, if these creatures exist, and if they're as powerful and as intelligent as the reports suggest, they'd be the apex predators in the environment. They'd be capable of ambushing a human, overpowering them, and dragging them away into the wilderness. And their tracks and their scent could easily be lost in the vastness of the parks. Now, I'm not saying that every disappearance in a national park is the work of a dogman, but I am saying we do need to look at that possibility. We need to look at the evidence, the anecdotal reports, the unsettling patterns. I talked about a story yesterday. A park ranger was with a female friend. They went to the overlook, and on the way back down, they were having a conversation. He turned to look at her, and she was gone. Vanished. While walking beside him. Never was found. Now, the stories of Dogman are too consistent, too widespread to be easily dismissed. People from different parts of the country with no connection to each other describing the same creature and describing having the same terrifying encounters. When you combine these accounts with the unsolved disappearances and general air of mystery that surrounds our national parks, it starts to paint a picture it's very hard to ignore. Though the evidence does support the fact Dogman does exist. They're out there in the wild places, and they're something of a threat. And until we take these reports seriously, until we start looking for evidence, until we acknowledge the possibility something terrifying is sharing the wilderness, a lot more people are going to disappear. More lives will be lost to a creature that walks on two legs. Now, finding official documented cases explicitly blaming Dogman is going to be impossible, of course. Law enforcement and park services aren't going to list Dogman or cryptid attack as a cause of death or disappearance. But what you do is you look at the circumstances, cases where the official explanations just are insufficient, and cases where the details align unsettlingly with the description and behaviors attributed to Dogman. Now, it's not just in the national parks that folks vanish unexplained. Entire families have vanished from their homes overnight. Everything is where it ought to be, but the people are gone. Now, I'm going to give you some examples of some allegedly Dogman-related disappearances. We got one, the vanishing of a backpacking couple. A young, experienced couple, avid backpackers, embark on a multi-day trip to a remote section of a national park known for its challenging terrain, but also for its unbelievable beauty. They're well-equipped, filed a trip plan with a friend, and are expected back on a specific date. When they don't come back, a search is initiated. Their car is found at the trailhead. Searchers followed their planned route and found their campsite several miles in. The tent's set up, sleeping bags are inside, food stored properly in bear-resistant containers. No signs of a struggle around the campsite. Backpacks containing personal items and maps are found. No sign of a struggle. Now, a bear attack would leave the campsite in disarray, torn tents and scattered food. A mountain lion attack, while it might be swift, might leave some evidence around the immediate area. The complete lack of disturbance suggests a swift, silent, and overwhelming force attacked the couple. Now, why would experienced backpackers abandon all their essential gear? If they got lost, of course, they'd likely take their backpacks and maps and survival items. If they were injured, they'd be near their camp or they'd left a trail. Leaving everything behind points to being taken by surprise and removed from the location quickly. Now, dogman encounters are often reported in remote, less trafficked areas, and this fits the scenario of a backpacking trip deep into the wilderness. And the idea that the victims were simply taken from their location, leaving no trace, aligns with the reported strength and ability of a dogman to carry its prey off. Then we got another story about a hunter's terrifying encounter and injury. In this particular story, a solo hunter, familiar with the area, stalking a deer in a thick forest in a national forest bordering on a park. Here's a strange, deep growl. He doesn't recognize any local animal, and he suddenly feels an intense sense of being watched. Well, he turns and sees a large, dark, bipedal figure moving quickly through the underbrush at him. Doesn't get a clear look, but is overwhelmed by fear and the sheer size and speed of the creature. He fires a shot in panic and runs, tripping and falling, and manages to get back to his truck and escape. Well, he's left with some deep scratches on his back and arms that don't look like typical animal claws. Also psychologically shaken, describing an almost primal terror. Reports the incident, but authorities are skeptical, attributing it to a possible bear encounter or a fall. I mean, let's face it, the powers that be are not going to believe anything that doesn't fit their predisposed little boxes. Now, the description of a large, dark, bipedal figure is a hallmark of dogman sightings. The strange, unrecognized growl points to something other than a known predator. And a lot of dogman encounters begin with this feeling of being observed, suggesting an intelligent predator stalking its prey. And the scratches, not fitting typical animal claws, could be indicative of the creature's physical characteristics. And of course, the profound fear and psychological impact reported by the witnesses is a recurring theme in dogman encounters. Got another case. Missing with strange footprints. In this particular story, a young woman goes for a solo hike on a popular but still somewhat remote trail in a national park, and she fails to come back by her estimated return time. Search team finds her backpack and water bottle near the trail. Short distance away, they find a set of large, unusual footprints leading off the trail into the dense woods. These tracks are larger than that of a human and have a distinctly canine shape, but they're clearly bipedal, showing a heel and toe impressions like a human foot, and the stride length is unusually long. Now, large bipedal canine-like footprints is maybe the most direct physical evidence that aligns with dogman descriptions. These tracks are distinct from bears and mountain lions and even large dogs. The tracks leading away from the established trail into the dense, difficult terrain suggest the creature is comfortable and capable of navigating these areas and potentially taking its prey there. And similar to the vanished backpackers, the abandonment of essential gear near the point where the tracks lead off the trail suggests a sudden forced departure. Needless to say, the young woman was never seen again. Now, we got a case of unexplained animal mutilation. In this particular scenario, the park rangers discover the carcass of a large deer or elk in a remote part of the park. Animal's body is partially consumed, but in a way that doesn't fit typical predator behavior. Certain organs were missing, or the way the flesh is torn is unusual. No sign of a struggle around the carcass that would be expected from a large predator like a bear. Now, some cryptology accounts suggest that dogman might exhibit unusual feeding habits, maybe targeting specific organs or consuming prey in a way that doesn't match known predators. And if a powerful creature like a dogman took down a large animal, there might be less evidence of a prolonged struggle compared to a less efficient predator. And finding these carcasses in a remote, less trafficked area aligns with the idea of a creature that avoids human interaction if it can. Now, these are interpretations and possibilities. In official investigation, these cases are often classified as missing persons with unknown circumstances or animal tracks with unusual aspects and may be attributed to factors like scavenging or the condition of the body. But if you look at the recurring themes in dogman accounts, the bipedal form, the size and strength, and the ability to move silently and swiftly, the fear it instills, and reports of unusual footprints and behaviors, Well, these type of cases in our national parks become deeply unsettling, and for those who believe in the possibility of dogmen, strong indicators that these creatures might be real and active. They're the dots that some connect to form a picture of a terrifying unknown predator in our wilderness. Now, if we look at more potential case files, not officially attributed to Dogman, they do contain elements that resonate with the characteristics and reported behaviors of these creatures. These examples further highlight the types of unexplained events in national parks that fuel speculation about a hidden predator. And then, of course, we have campground disturbances and unidentified howls. Campers at a remote, less used campground in a national park report a night of extreme disturbances. They hear loud guttural howls unlike any wolf or coyote they've ever heard coming from the woods surrounding their campground. The howls are described as unsettling and intelligent sounding. Some campers report hearing heavy bipedal footsteps moving through the periphery of the campground just outside the line of the campfires. And while no direct attacks occur, the campers are deeply frightened and cut their trip short. They report the incidents to park rangers to find no definitive evidence, no unusual tracks within the campground, and sounds are dismissed as possibly being coyotes or even a lone wolf. Consistent reports describe dogman howls as distinct from known canids and often deeper and more resonant, conveying a sense of menace. Hearing heavy bipedal movement around the camp perimeter directly aligns with the description of dogman as a bipedal creature. And the sounds and targets seem focused on the human presence, suggesting awareness and maybe intimidation or testing. Now, a dogman is often described as being incredibly elusive and intelligent, capable of avoiding leaving clear evidence in areas where humans are present. But there's enough evidence to indicate that something unusual is going on. Now, there's been an unexplained loss of search dog scent trails in a lot of these incidents. Search and rescue teams are deployed to find missing persons in a national park, and experienced canine teams are brought in to track the scent of the missing person. The search dogs are initially able to pick up a trail, but in certain areas that scent simply vanishes. Dogs become agitated, confused, even appear scared, refusing to proceed in a particular direction. Now, the handlers, of course, are experienced, know their dogs well, and this behavior is highly unusual for a clear scent trail. Now, some theories about cryptids suggest they may have a way of masking their scent, making it difficult for tracking dogs to follow them. This could be a natural ability or even a behavioral trait. Now, if dogman's an apex predator and instills fear in other animals, this fear could extend to domestic dogs like search dogs, causing them to shut down or become hesitant. A creature capable of moving quickly and across varied terrain might be able to break a scent trail in ways that confuse or defeat search dogs. And if the search dogs can't track it, the odds of finding the missing person is drastically reduced. Now, we got some other stories. Hikers or park rangers in this particular instance discovered a disturbing scene in a remote area. A patch of disturbed earth, broken branches, maybe some torn clothing or personal items. And there are drag marks leading away from the area. No clear tracks at the beginning of the drag mark, and the tracks at the end are either indistinct or unusual. The scene suggests something was dragged away from this location, but there's no clear indication of what happened or who was involved. Now, there might be a missing person reported in that general area later, but if nobody knows someone's missing, it's impossible to tie the missing person to this particular situation. Now, a powerful creature capable of subduing a human could easily drag a body away from the initial point of contact to a more remote, secluded location. If the ambush was swift and silent, might not be clear footprints at the point of attack. Now, tracks left by a dragging body, especially in varied terrain, might be difficult to identify. Or if the creature itself left tracks, it might be the large, unusual ones attributed to Dogman. The problem is, if, let's use the term Dogman, picks up the body and carries it away without allowing it to touch the ground, there's no scent trail. Now, we got another case of a solo hiker walking on a trail and feels an intense, sudden feeling of being watched. They stop and look around, don't see anything. Feeling persists, becoming increasingly unsettling. Then they hear a faint sound, a branch breaking. It seems too heavy for a small animal, or a little growl that seems to come from nowhere. Then there's the feeling of being stalked, becomes overwhelming. They decide to turn back, feeling a sense of immense relief once they're out of that area. Now, this is a common precursor to a reported cryptid encounter, suggesting a predator is observing its potential prey. Now, the sounds described are often just enough to be noticed, but not enough to be easily identifiable, fitting with a creature that's trying to remain hidden. And this feeling of being stalked is a direct indicator of a predator's behavior. These encounters often involve the creature remaining unseen or only partially being glimpsed, suggesting a level of intelligence and caution to avoid full detection. And a disturbing combination of animalistic features like a snout and fur and paws and hands and human-like posture and movement creates a profound sense of unease and terror in a witness. It's known as the uncanny valley effect, can be deeply psychologically impactful. Despite the vast distances between reported sightings, the description of the creature's physical appearance and behavior are remarkably consistent. This suggests that people aren't just imagining things or misidentifying known animals, or actually encountering something specific and recurring. So if you take the reported characteristics of Dogman, its immense strength, its speed, its agility, its ability to move silently and avoid detection, its apparent intelligence and predatory behavior, and the terrifying impact it has on those who encounter it, and overlay them onto the details of unexplained disappearances, strange animal attacks, and unsettling encounters in National Park, the fit becomes alarmingly plausible for a believer in Dogman. The lack of conventional evidence, the unsettling nature of the events, and the feeling that something is actively preying on people in the wild spaces all align with the profile of a creature. It's a perfect storm, so to speak. In the bayous and forests of Louisiana, while the term Dogman might be a more modern label, accounts of a large bipedal canine-like creature in the folklore and oral histories of that region are not new. These stories often come from the very people who spend the most time in the deepest parts of the wilderness. They might be hunters or trappers or farmers who work the land. And it's important to preface this by saying that finding documented case files explicitly stating Dogman caused this incident in the historical records is virtually impossible. Now, these stories are often passed down through generations, shared around campfires, and exist in the realms of local legend and personal testimony rather than official reports. Listening to my relatives, which came out of Arkansas, talk about some of the strange things that happened to them, I thoroughly understand what's being talked about here. There's a lot of themes and examples of encounters from Louisiana, focusing on hunters and farmers' perspectives and the potential for death and serious harm. There's a number of interesting stories, and one is the Rougarou collection. Louisiana Creole and Cajun folklore, the Rougarou is a legendary creature, often described as a werewolf-like being that prowls the swamps and the forest. While the Rougarou legend has variations, one common description is a creature with a wolf's head and a human body, or a large hairy bipedal wolf. This aligns strongly with the visual description of Dogman. And regular hunters who ventured deep into the swamps or forest report seeing large shadowy figures moving through the trees on two legs. They describe hearing unsettling howls or growls that don't sound like any known animal. These encounters are often accompanied by a profound sense of fear and the feeling of being watched. Now, while they might not use the term Dogman, they were describing something that fits that profile, of course. And a number of farmers with land bordering wild areas report finding livestock mutilated in unusual ways with injuries that don't seem to fit known predators. They also report seeing large canine-like tracks near their property but too big for a dog or a wolf. Incidents are sometimes attributed to the Rougarou or a similar creature. Now, hunters have often described observing fear in other animals. Those that spend long hours in the woods observe unusually skittish behavior in deer and hogs and other game animals in specific areas. They see signs these animals actively avoiding a certain part of the forest, suggesting the presence of a dominant, fear-inducing predator that even other wild animals are cautious around. And farmers finding unexplained livestock losses has been an issue. Beyond mutilation, farmers experience unexplained losses of livestock, especially at night. Animals simply vanish from pastures bordering wild areas with no signs of forced entry or struggle that would indicate a typical predator like a coyote or a bobcat. Sheer size and strength attributed to a dogman could explain the ability to take down and remove larger livestock. Now, there's been a number of stories of close calls, I guess you could say. An old hunter interviewed recounted a terrifying experience in her youth. They were deep in the woods and suddenly felt an intense presence. Turned and saw a large, dark, bipedal figure watching them from the tree line. Now, that creature didn't necessarily attack, but the encounter was so unsettling and fear-inducing that the hunter was deeply shaken and avoided that area ever since. And these close call stories are often passed down as warnings to others. Now, there's also been stories of strange humanoids seen in some of the parks. In this one particular case, the ranger was experienced, thought he had seen it all. Bears, cougars, even a bobcat once, bold as brass, right on the trail, but he encountered something that he wasn't prepared to deal with. He was doing his usual patrol, he said, just checking the perimeter near the old growth section. The air was still, the only sound the crunch of his boots on the dry leaves. And that's when he heard it. Not the usual rustle of critters, but a sort of shuffling, coming from just beyond a thick stand of pine. He grabbed the flashlight off his belt and went closer, and his heart thumping a rhythm against his ribs. He rounded the trees, turned on the light, and his bright beam cut through the gathering gloom. And that's when he saw them. They weren't bears, they weren't deer, wasn't anything he'd ever seen in a nature book or anywhere else for that matter. And with three of them, huddled together near a fallen log. And they were small, no taller than a child, but their bodies were different. Thin, almost skeletal, a uniform unsettling gray. Their heads were too big for their bodies, with large dark eyes that seemed to drink in the light. But it was the way they moved that unsettled him the most. They weren't walking like we do. Their legs were short, and they moved with a strange, jerky side-to-side motion, like puppets on an ill-fitting string. It was a gait that was both awkward and unnatural. And he said he froze. His mind, usually so quick to identify and categorize, was absolutely blank. His mouth went dry. They turned their heads and looked at him, those big eyes staring. For a moment, he felt a connection, a bizarre sense of awareness. And just as quickly as they appeared, they shuffled away into the dark, their gray forms melting into the shadows of the forest. He stood there for a long time, he said, the beams of his flashlight still marking the night, the silence of the woods, now feeling heavy with the weight of the impossible. Now, he said he'd always been a man of science, of logic. He scoffed at the tales of Bigfoot and UFOs that some of the locals whisper about, but what he saw that night defied explanation. Small gray figures, odd jerky walk, they weren't from around there. He knew it in his bones. And he didn't know what he was going to do. Who's he going to tell? The other rangers? They'd think he's crazy. But he knew what he saw. Well, the sun went down and the forest took on a whole new character. The familiar sounds of daylight faded and replaced by the rustles of nocturnal animals and the whispering of the wind through the pines. But lately, he said he'd heard another sound, or a sight that had been keeping him awake at night. Starts just after twilight, deep inside the most tangled, impenetrable parts of the park. He's talking about the areas where the undergrowth is so thick it's like a wall of thorns and fallen logs. The kind of place where even a seasoned ranger has to fight for every foot of ground. And that's where he sees them. Inexplicable lights. They're not the steady glow of a campfire, the bobbing beam of a hiker's headlamp. They're different somehow. They flicker, they pulse, and sometimes they move in patterns too deliberate to be natural. They're pale, almost ethereal, blue, white, seem to emanate from the very heart of the densest woodland. And every time he sees them, his instincts kick in. Initially, he thinks unauthorized activity. Somebody's in there doing something they shouldn't. So he gets his gear and his flashlight and he heads toward the lights. But then he encounters something that makes his blood run cold. As he gets closer, as he reaches the edge of an impossibly thick undergrowth, the lights vanish like somebody flipped a switch. One moment they're there, a silent, pulsating mystery in the darkness. The next minute they're gone, leaving in the familiar, unsettling blackness of the forest. And he said he'd tried everything, approaching quietly, trying to circle around, even just waiting and watching from a distance, but the result's always the same. Those lights are visible only when he's a certain distance away. But the moment he gets to the edge of that dense thicket, they vanish, as if they know he's coming. And this is in the area near the campground, or anywhere hikers or hunters would realistically venture. This is the untouched wild heart of the park, where the terrain's so difficult to be nigh on to impossible for anybody to navigate, let alone set up a camp or carry equipment. Well, the rational part of his brain tries to find explanations. Maybe it's swamp gas, though he'd never seen swamp gas liked in this manner before. Maybe it's some kind of bioluminescent fungus, but the movement and the patterns are too regular. Every logical explanation he come up with falls apart when he considers the circumstances. It's like the forest itself is hiding something that doesn't want to be found. And the more he sees these lights, the more they disappear as he approaches, the more he connects them to those strange creatures he saw. The small gray ones with their unnatural walk. Not just the lights and the strange figures anymore. Now it's people. The visitors, they come out seeking peace, a connection with nature, and they come away with a sense of unease that's palpable. He runs into them on the trails at the visitor center, sometimes even just pulled over by the side of the road looking shaken. And they tell him stories, and the stories are starting to sound eerily similar. Usually they start out by saying something along the lines of, "I think somebody was following me." They describe it as a feeling, a prickling on the back of their necks, and then they hear it. A rustling in the leaves, a snapping twig, the sound of something moving parallel to them just out of sight in the trees. It's not the casual movement of a squirrel or a bird. It sounds deliberate, as if whatever it is pacing them is keeping pace with their steps on the trail. And they stop and they listen, and the sound stops as well. They call out, "Hello, is anybody there?" They don't ever get an answer. Then tentatively they start walking again, and that sound, whatever pacing them, resumes. The unseen presence is back, moving through the underbrush just beyond the line of their sight. It's like a shadow, a persistent echo of their own movement. Of course, they've tried looking for what it might be. They stepped off the trail, peered into the dense woods, scanned the trees. They don't find anything. No footprints, no disturbing foliage that shouldn't be there. No sign of anything or anyone, just the unsettling feeling they're being watched and followed, maybe even stalked. And this isn't just one or two people that have told him the stories. It's happening more and more. Families, solo hikers, even experienced outdoorsmen. They all describe the same phenomena, the sound of something moving in the woods by the trail, the feeling of being followed, the complete absence of any physical evidence when they stop to investigate. And of course, being a ranger, he tries to reassure them. He tells them it could be animals, the wind, their imagination playing tricks on them in the quiet of the woods, but he says in the back of his mind he knows better. The way they describe it, the sheer consistency of their accounts, is too specific to be dismissed so easily. It's the same feeling he gets when he sees those vanishing lights, so when he thinks about those small gray creatures. Feeling of being observed by something that doesn't belong there, something that moves in ways that aren't natural, something that seems to be intentionally avoiding detection. So could it be those creatures, the things this ranger saw? Are they moving through the forest, keeping pace with the visitors, observing from the shadows? Are they curious, or do they have a more sinister idea in mind? Well, to the ranger, the park used to feel like a sanctuary, a place of peace and predictable rhythms. Now he says it feels like a stage, and the visitors, and maybe even the ranger himself, are unwilling actors in a play he doesn't understand. The rustling in the woods, the feeling of being watched, the vanishing lights, it all points to something hidden, something that's slowly, subtly making its presence known. And he has a growing, terrifying suspicion it's the same something that walks with those strange, jerky side-to-side movements in the twilight. Well, as he was near the main trailhead, finishing up the paperwork in his truck, he heard a strange sound, a sharp shout with panic echoing through the morning. And then the figure came from the trees, a lone hiker, moving at a pace that is closer to a run than a walk. Practically collided with the ranger's truck, his chest heaving, his eyes wide with terror. The ranger said he was a young guy, maybe his early 20s, dressed in hiking gear, but his face was pale and drawn. And he gasped out something was tracking him, pointing back toward the trail he'd just come from. His hand was shaking, his words tumbled out in a rush, disjointed and frantic. He'd been walking, enjoying the peace and the quiet when he started hearing it. Sound in the woods just off the trail, not loud, but persistent, like something moving, deliberately keeping pace with him. He said he'd stopped, tried to listen, but the sound would stop too. He started walking again, and the sound started walking as well. He described that same unsettling feeling no other visitors had mentioned, feeling of being watched or something hidden just beyond his sight. But this time he said it was more. He caught glimpses of it. Not clear views, but flashes of movement just beyond the thickest parts of the underbrush. Something low to the ground, moving quickly, seeming to dart from tree to tree. Couldn't make out details, but the movement was wrong. Not like a deer, not like a fox. It was unnatural, was his best description. And then he said the sound got closer, much closer. He could hear the breaking of the twigs, the rustling of leaves right at the edge of the trail. It wasn't just pacing him anymore. It was closing in on him. And that's when he'd panicked. He turned and run, not even looking back, just sprinting for the trailhead for any sign of human presence. Well, according to the ranger, the hiker was still shaking as he told his story, kept looking back at the woods, his eyes darting nervously. And the worst part, the part that hammered home the terrifying reality of the fear, is what he kept repeating to the ranger. He said it wasn't a bear, Ranger, it wasn't a mountain lion, we don't even have them here. And he was right. Park isn't home to large predators like bears and mountain lions. They do have deer and coyote and bobcats occasionally, but nothing would stalk a human on a trail like that. And even those animals likely bolt at the sound of a human, not deliberately follow him. What an animal encounter. It was something else. Something was actively tracking him, something that moved in the shadows, something that instilled a level of fear that the ranger said he rarely saw in visitors, even those that had close calls with wildlife. Well, they tried to calm him down, offered him water, and assured him he was safe. Walked back down the trail a little way, scanned the woods, and listened. The forest was silent, serene, the picture of a peaceful nature, but the ranger knew better. The vanishing lights he himself had seen, the unsettling feeling of being watched, reported by other visitors, and now this. A lone hiker, genuinely terrified, describing something tracking him in a park where there were no large predators. It all fit together. The pieces are starting to align. They formed a picture that was far more terrifying than anything the ranger could have imagined. He knew it was them, the small gray figures, the ones he had seen, the ones that moved with that strange jerky gait. They're not just there, now they're active. And moving through the forest, observing, maybe even interacting with the visitors in ways we don't understand. And on that note, we come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow and talk more about strange creatures in the national forest and unexplained disappearances. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show saying have a truly great evening.